It's live.
Did you get either the PS5 or the Xbox?
Not yet, nope.
No.
Did you?
I did. I copied the PS5.
Oh, I did see that. Never mind. Yeah.
I could pick that up on Thursday.
All right. All right, ready? 3, 2. Welcome to the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show, proudly presented by Crowworthy, where winners are serving winners coast to coast with sports, gambling, fantasy, and more. You can follow at Crowworthy on Twitter. Visit us at crowworthy.com, and you can check out the Pittsburgh City page for podcasts such as this one, blogs, and more. I am Smitty. With me, as always, is my co-host, Donnie Druin. Donnie, what is going on?
It's been a very up and down week for me with Christian McCaffrey coming back and then him not coming back after coming back. So yeah,
roller coaster of emotions. What did you get, like 30-some points in his return though? And then
he got 37 points in my home league. So.
And what's just for the viewers, I'm sure that they know if they are recurring, but why don't you tell us about that roster again?
Oh yeah, so before I got Justin Herbert, I had Dak Prescott as my quarterback.
Oh, you have Justin Herbert now on that team.
Yeah. So Dak was hurt. Then I picked up Herbert, and he's been nothing but a godsend. I have Kamara as my RB1. I have McCaffrey as my RB2. And then in the flex, I usually play James Robinson. And then I just traded for Michael Thomas, so he's my wide receiver 1. And then I usually rotate between Tyler Lockett and then Robert Woods as my starters.
That is so ridiculous.
I mean, it's an 8-man keeper league, so like wonky stuff like that happens all the time. So
yeah, but man,
7-2. I cannot complain.
No, that's real solid. Okay, so we're gonna jump into some stuff. As if you've been watching the show the last couple of weeks, you know that we have gotten away from the ordinary. We're not just giving you top 5 weekly rankings anymore. We put out some polls, which we're going to talk about. Being 1 week ago from today was election day. We took the day off, encouraged everybody, if you hadn't already, to get out and vote. And we also had you vote on some Twitter polls. So we will give you the results of those, see where those where people went with those, and we'll give you our opinions on them as well. We'll answer those. And then we're also going to do our waiver wire stuff, of course. And then I threw out, and we're going to do guys that, typically you might think automatically this guy's going in my lineup. However, this week with a tough matchup, you might want to, keep out of your lineup. We're some guys you wouldn't typically think about that I think or Donnie thinks are guys that you absolutely should have in your lineup just based off matchup. So we're going to do that again, kind of different content for you guys. We're going to switch up the show each and every week, or at least try to. If there's something specific you want to see, tweet at us. You can let us know in the comments if you're watching live right now. If you're listening back on, regardless of what platform it's on, head on over to youtube.com/C/around the 412. You can watch us live when we do the show, or you can watch the playback of the show, whatever it might be. Leave us a comment. I check them out all the time. Leave a like as well. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, all the good stuff. You know what I'm talking about. First, I got to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, which is a very well-known company, so I don't think I need to tell you guys about them. However, I'm going to anyway. That is Manscaped. So autumn is in the air, and Manscaped is here to ensure you don't carve your pumpkins, although that has probably already taken place, especially if you don't have any Manscaped products. When you're grooming, by pumpkins, we actually mean your boys downstairs. In fact, Manscaped is on a mission to change the way you approach caring for your balls. And great news, they just released their products in the UK, Canada, and Australia. 3 different parts of the world where I know that we are also listened to just by checking out Spreaker and seeing where we are geographically. People in those countries are listening to Around the 412 and the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Podcast, so we appreciate each and every one of you guys. I have these products. Tyler has these products. I don't know if Donnie does, but if Donnie doesn't, he needs to get on this.
Dude, yeah, no, I'm about due for new razors as well. I think mine's going out.
The Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer offers a replaceable ceramic blade with advanced skin safe technology, which helps reduce grooming accidents. Their new Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer uses that same skin safe technology when you're trimming those delicate nose hairs of yours. The Crop Care Kit includes the Crop Preserver ball deodorant, which I bring up on here all the time. Everybody knows that pumpkin spice lattes and ball deodorant go hand in hand. Of course, who didn't know that? Crop Cleanser body wash, a full body wash that you can also use on your hair. So, bam, bam, all your hair covered. Crop Mop ball wipes. You never know when the opportunity is going to strike. You should always be prepared. Plus, you don't want to stink when you sit around that Thanksgiving dinner. That is coming up soon. If you suffer from stank foot or standing on your feet all day, such as our co-host Tyler, then I have a product just for you, the Foot Duster Foot Deodorant. It is a coin tea tree oil and offers a pleasant experience for the stankiest feet and allows you to take your shoes off in confidence. They also have a cologne. The Manscaped Refined Cologne is a cost-effective way to smell clean and fresh for your date. These formulations are all vegan, cruelty-free, dye-free, and sulfate-free, so you know your manhood is in good hands. You can get any of these products I've talked about at manscaped.com, and then when you use the code 412, you'll get 20% off plus free shipping at checkout. Again, that's code 412 for 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com.
I literally cannot have said it better.
I don't know if I could say it better if I tried doing that again. But again, fantasy pools, start them, avoid them, waiver wire. That's what we got for you guys today. So, I think we can kind of just jump right into it. Probably should start with the Twitter polls. So let me pull those up and see where we were at. Crap, what was the hashtag I used again?
I don't know. I have all of these listed with the current results on my notes if you want them.
Oh, okay, you do?
Yeah.
Okay. Look at you.
I know, man. Always come prepared. I'm the first poll that we did was buy or sell. Justin Herbert is a top 5 fantasy quarterback for the rest of the season. 59% buy it, 41% do not.
Oh. This is actually something I think that we talked about, you and I, anyway.
Yeah, at least minorly, whether it be
on
the show or like through text. So
yeah, so as you said, 59 to 41 buying it, and that says this is a guy that didn't open the season as a starter.
Yeah,
they said they were going with Tyrod Taylor. We knew that wouldn't be the case for the whole season. It's typically the way things go with these rookie quarterbacks. But for him to have the season that he's having, kind of unbelievable. All the hype coming in about Joe Burrow, even Tua going before Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert's the third quarterback to this class. I mean, I know that, you were skeptical of him coming in, and I think rightfully so. A Pac-12 quarterback. We've seen, what the quarterbacks coming out of Oregon look like. I think I'm kind of on the fence about this. Top 5, think about the top guys you think. Before the year, that would have seemed obviously egregious. I think even right now, I'm on the fence. I really am. I think if this were to be like top 7, I would say absolutely. I think he's a guy that is going to be sneak in maybe right into that back end of the top 5. So for that reason, I'm slightly going to say so.
Yeah, so I'm also on the fence as well. And obviously me picking up Herbert and like just seeing what he's done for my fantasy team a week out, it's definitely helped a lot. He's currently quarterback 9 in standard scoring leagues for quarterbacks. He hasn't had a game below 20 fantasy points since week 3 of the season. He's averaging 24 points per game. I think he's due to hit some kind of rookie wall at some point. I just don't think it's reasonable to expect him to continue great performance after performance. But he's got literally the entire AFC East schedule. So Jets, Bills, Dolphins, Patriots, all within the next 4 weeks. None of those defenses really scream shut down Justin Herbert to me. So while I'm on the fence with you, but I would have to kind of flip my vote to the other side and say buy it. I do think, he can certainly climb up, 4 more quarterback spots to get in that top 5 conversation.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm looking at the schedule. The only thing that I would say is you were talking about the rookie wall, and I wanted to bring that up too. Plus, they've already had their bye. So, yeah, his stretch, throughout the rest of the season, Dolphins, Jets, Bills, Patriots, Falcons, Raiders, Broncos, Chiefs. Kind of a mixed bag there. I don't think that that's like a crazy, intimidating schedule. I think a lot of those defenses are exploitable. And to be honest with you, as a guy that has them, I think you can attest to it. He's been pretty much matchup proof anyway.
Definitely,
So
yeah. I think the only thing is that sometimes he can be a little bit careless with the ball. You know, he does have a handful of turnovers to his name. I mean, but if he's going to get me as a fantasy owner 30, 35 points a game, I think I'm okay with that.
right. Yeah. So we'll see how it plays out, but I'm glad that we differ because one of us is going to be right. Um, I missed Ricky did ask us a question. I didn't see because I didn't have the chat pulled up yet. Excuse me. So he said someone released Myles Gaskin in my league. I'm trying to pick him up and put him in my IR spot. I have Ronald Jones and Miles Sanders until Gaskin is healthy. Good pickup in Gaskin? Question mark.
Yeah, I think they're really starting to use Gaskin a lot. I think he's kind of been the guy, and that's been the guy you've talked about quite a few times on the show. You know, throughout the weeks as waiver wire pickup. So I don't know exactly what he did last week.
He's on IR right now.
That's right. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense.
So that's the thing that I would think about is he's on IR right now, and that's what really sucks is because it's just like stunting all the momentum that he had because he was turning into that workhorse back for Miami. I mean, Matt Breita's there, Jordan Howard's there. Neither of those guys were really cutting into Myles Gaskin's workload. He was being given every opportunity. The only thing was, kind of frustrating, but Jordan Howard would be used if they were like at the 1 yard line just to, pound the ball into the end zone. I think he has more touchdowns than yards this year. But the thing for me is Myles Gaskin just had all this momentum, looked like he was to be the workhorse back, and then he gets hurt. And now he's on IR, and they have, 3 backs now going in Miami. And what if one of those guys, shows out for the next couple of weeks before Myles Gaskin comes back? They could very well just go with a hot hand approach. And not to mention, Tua now taking over in that offense since Myles Gaskin got hurt. How different is that going to look? What are the touches going to be like? I would have some reservations, but for a guy that you can pick up and just put in an IR spot, you're not talking about really dropping anybody. I think Myles Gaskin is probably worth an ad.
Yeah, definitely. No, that screams low risk, high reward. Just for a guy you can put in the IR spot, and you can kind of leave him there until obviously he gets back off of it. And it's not like you have to start him right away with the other 2 running backs that he has. So I really don't see a downside with that.
Yes, Sarge mentioning that he also has Justin Herbert, and he's been incredible.
He's what the Spanish would call es fenomeno.
Yeah. Okay. So looking at some of these other polls that we put out there, this one incredibly close. Which wide receiver would you rather have in fantasy for the rest of the season? Terry McLaurin or Adam Thielen? This one comes in at 51 to 49% in favor of Adam Thielen over Terry McLaurin. And I will say, I would have been a lot more on the fence about this before. Not that I think incredibly high of Kyle Allen in Washington, but Alex Smith, the check down king, is going to be the quarterback now in Washington. I would also go with Thielen here, which is what the fans voted for, 51 to 49%.
Yeah, and it's not to discount Terry McLaurin's talent at all.
He's unbelievable.
When they push the ball downfield, he's coming down with that ball 9 times out of 10. I mean, he's just phenomenal, with or without the ball in his hands. But in the Adam Thielen, man, especially whenever you've seen Justin Jefferson kind of take that dip down from the one big week he's had a few weeks ago, I definitely think Thielen's been the more consistent and productive guy. He still has a starting quarterback there in Minnesota, whereas Terry McLaurin does not. Like you mentioned, Alex Smith, doesn't necessarily like to push the ball down the field a whole lot. I mean, he did his last year in Kansas City, but that's a completely different solar system than the team he's on right now. So, I think both of them are extremely talented. But fantasy-wise, moving forward, I would really, really like the consistent floor of a guy like Adam Thielen.
Sticking with the wide receiver theme here, I put out a poll that's specific to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who will have the most fantasy points from now till the end of the season between that trio that's now in Tampa Bay with Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans? This one, Mike Evans wins this 46%, Chris Godwin at 29%, Antonio Brown at 25%. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so this was actually a really hard question for me to answer. Just looking at numbers, looking at projected, stats the rest of the year, looking at probabilities. I almost feel like this is a Steelers wide receiver trio where any guy can pop off any week. All 3 of those guys are tremendously talented. all in their own rights. Mike Evans with, Godwin being out majority of the season, obviously leads the team in fantasy points for receivers. But Chris Godwin still, whenever he plays, averages more points per game, slightly, it's just, 1 point more per game, but still averages more points per game than a guy like Mike Evans. And then you throw Antonio Brown into this mixed bag of receivers. And, he had 5 targets last week. It's not like, he wasn't, featured or focused in on the offense. You can only expect that to climb higher. So the answer to the question, I don't know. I really don't know. I think I'm siding with Chris Godwin. Just the rest of the way, it's just because we know Tom Brady likes to utilize him a lot. He loves the slot receivers. Whenever Godwin's healthy, he has been able to produce. But it honestly would not surprise me if Evans or Brown overtook him.
I would be, I think, with the pull on this and going with Mike Evans, just due to the touchdown number production. I mean, every time they get within the 10-yard line, it's been him or Gronk. So, and Tom Brady, absolutely perfect still. No. They did have one incompletion. I forgot about Lattimore breaking up the one to Mike Evans. They have one incompletion between the two of them in the red zone. And every time it's resulted in a touchdown besides that one breakup by Marshawn Lattimore this past Sunday night. So I think just due to the touchdown production that Mike Evans has, I'm also, skeptical with Chris Godwin, how that finger is going to continue to affect him. If it does, he's going to answer those questions, I think, in the coming weeks. We'll see if, he just gets better and better each week, which I would expect to happen as that continues to heal. But until it does, I think that Mike Evans could jump out to enough of a lead here in the next couple of weeks where he finishes as the number one guy. But again, you mentioned Antonio Brown's involvement. Yeah, one game into this, he played like how many snaps? I don't know. 20 something.
He played a pretty significant amount for
like they were saying, so anywhere between like 15 to 35, and I don't know where it ended up falling, but he had 3 receptions for 31 yards on 5 targets, as you mentioned. So I do think that obviously week in and week out, I think every single week he's going to demand some volume. So this was a tough question. That's why it popped in my mind. I was like, I want to put this out there, see what people think. 326 votes on the poll. Like I said, 46% going with Mike Evans. And I think I'm with them just due to the touchdown production. I think that's the easiest to forecast. This one was an absolute blowout. Which QB would you rather have on your fantasy team just for the rest of the season? Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray? Kyler Murray wins this one running away, 86% to 14%. And I got to tell you, I'm with the majority on this as well, which is crazy to think about, to think that, Lamar Jackson, what he did last year came into this year, QB1, maybe QB2. And if it was QB2, it wasn't for Kyler Murray. But you and I have been hyping up Kyler Murray for some time. We expected this type of production from him. He's putting it out there. Even when he's not incredibly efficient as a passer, what he adds in the running game makes him QB1 regardless. But he's having a fantastic fantasy football season. We expected it. And on the reverse side of that, Lamar Jackson really not having a great fantasy football season. He has not given you that return of investment when you took him, back end of round 1 for some people, maybe round 2, probably when him and Pat Mahomes go at the latest early round 3. And you could have waited till, 5 or 6 for a guy like Kyler Murray. So the return of investment from Lamar Jackson, just not great. I'm going Kyler Murray here as well by a landslide.
Yeah, it's Kyler Murray by a landslide for me as well. I spoke with Lamar Jackson. I told him about the poll. He was trailing 80. He said, stop the count. So, I think we'll have to just leave it there. Yeah, Lamar's only
trust. Whoop, whoop.
Lamar's only hit over 20 points in a fantasy game twice since week 1. He only has 100 rushing yards once this season, scored only 3 touchdowns on the ground. I know we're talking about a quarterback, but you didn't draft Lamar Jackson just to be a quarterback, especially the first quarterback off the board. You drafted him to be that insane Michael Vick 2.0 player we all saw from 2019 and just not putting it out this year. On the other hand, Kyler's lowest fantasy output this year has been 21 points, averaging 29 points per game. And he's kind of the runaway right now, for best fantasy quarterback, and it's not really close.
Yeah, I mean, again, I picked him to be inside the top 5, but, QB1 I thought would be either Lamar again or potentially Pat Mahomes. I mean, to your point, like you just said, you weren't drafting Lamar Jackson to just be a quarterback. Had you told me before the season started, this guy's going to be running less this year, even though that was talked about a little bit by the Ravens, I would not have had him where I thought he would be, because that completely takes away, half of what he brings to the table. Yeah. At least half of what he brings to the table. What makes Lamar Jackson so great is that dual threat ability. If he's not providing that, that takes away his fantasy value. He cuts it in half.
Yeah, and it's not like the Ravens are just taking away Lamar's touches away with everybody else's. I mean, we're still talking about the number one rushing team in the NFL, just in terms of rushing attempts per game. The Ravens love to run the football. They draft 50 running backs every year, just to make sure
I think they just signed another one.
Yeah, just make sure they are able to do that. So yeah, if Lamar's rushing attempts aren't going to be there, then it's just going to go to somebody else in the backfield. So I think we all kind of expected his numbers to slightly dip a little bit. He just hasn't produced for where he was drafted so far.
I'm pretty sure they just brought back Justin Forsett and Alex Collins.
Oh,
no, and then the final poll. Speaking of running backs. I don't know why this pool did like double the other pools, and I'm guessing just because it had a Steeler mentioned in it. Which running back would you rather have for the rest of the season? 633 votes on this poll. 64% go with James Conner. 36% go with Josh Jacobs. I gotta say, I'd go against this. I'm with Josh Jacobs on this. And for me, James Conner, I know take away this Dallas game where he wasn't really involved, kind of just the way that it happened. I mean, the Steelers were having so much success just going 5 wide. We saw the results there. They needed to be able to come back in that football game. James Conner, though, if you look at the numbers, yards per touch, everything like that, having a pretty solid season. The reason I'll say Josh Jacobs is I just think that he's the clear-cut guy in Vegas. And not to say James Conner isn't, but I think that, we saw Anthony McFarland on the field a little bit more. Benny Snell every once in a while is going to have some involvement. I just think that Josh Jacobs is guaranteed to have pretty much all the work in Vegas. Maybe he, gives up a passing down here to a Jalen Richard or somebody like that, but nothing to what I expect that we'll see Anthony McFarland start to get as the season progresses. So I'm going Josh Jacobs here.
Yeah, and this was another swing stay vote for me. Really could have gone. I was on the fence for it for sure. When you look at James Conner, we're talking about RB12, averaging 14.3 points per game. Last Sunday was his first single-digit performance since week 1. He's recorded multiple receptions in all but one game this year, so that just tells you the amount of involvement that he has. Josh Jacobs, RB10, averaging 15.5 points per game. So he's doing just a little bit better, through the first part of the season than Conner so far. I would like to agree with you, but Josh Jacobs just hasn't been involved in the passing attack quite like we wanted him to. Remember a couple of weeks ago, the Raiders said that they wanted to get him more involved in the passing attack, and that simply just hasn't happened. The injury bug also hasn't been kind of Josh Jacobs this year. He's been banged up a little bit. That's resulted in the loss of touches. I just think going forward, we can trust the Steelers offense to put points on the board a little bit more than the Raiders can.
Okay, so you're going with James Conner.
Yeah.
I could understand. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was on the fence here. I was surprised at how, I guess, we are a Pittsburgh show, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised by the gap there. I thought this would be a lot closer to 50-50. And the reason I chose these two running backs, I went on Yahoo, did rest of season projections. Those guys are neck and neck with what they're projected for the rest of the year. So that's why I chose these two guys. But no, again, I'm happy that we're split here. We're pretty much split on everything besides Thielen and Kyler Murray over Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
So we'll see how those turn out. We'll talk about them at the end of the year. You just got to remind us. Because I know this brain ain't remembering that.
True.
Okay, so moving along, again, something that we haven't necessarily done exactly to in this type of segment. We may have done, like stardom sit-ems in the past. I remember, season 1 of the Fantasy Football Show last year. We may have incorporated this every once in a while, but essentially guys that you wouldn't typically have in your lineup that this week, just based off matchup, we feel like should definitely be in. And on the reverse side of that, who's a guy that's typically locked into a lineup that, Donnie and I are going to say this week, you might not want to play him. I have 2 guys on here that I can tell you right now in my sit-em, they're going to be in every lineup. If you have them, you're playing them. However, I hate the matchups, and I'd be surprised if they got to their projection, but we'll talk about that. Let's start with the stardoms. A guy that I'd be absolutely pounding the table for at quarterback that is on the waiver wire in most leagues is going to be Jared Goff going against the Seattle Seahawks. Just saw what Josh Allen did to the Seattle defense. Look at what everybody's doing to the Seattle defense. Historically bad up there in Seattle. They go out, They get Jamal Adams. They spend first round picks to do so. I mean, the return on investment hasn't been great there. He's missed a lot of time, and I get that. But the issue with that team, they can't rush the passer. Carlos Dunlap should help them in that area as the season goes on. And Jamal Adams also, a box safety should be able to help in that aspect. They can't cover anybody. I mean, they're it's crazy to see the fall from grace from the Legion of Boom to where they're at now. This is nowhere near that defense. Jared Goff, with all those weapons, should be in for a big day against them.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because he's actually my waiver wire quarterback of the week is Jared Goff. So you hit that right on the nail in the head. I completely agree with everything you just said. I mean, Seattle's been a historically bad defense. I just think coming off of a bye week, the Rams have had a lot of time to prepare for a team like that. My under the radar guy is going to be Drew Lock versus the Las Vegas Raiders, and he's had a 5-2 touchdown interception ratio and averaging 280.5 passing yards per game his last two outings. He's starting to find his groove a little bit, so I'm really confident and the Broncos' ability, not maybe to win games, but to at least put up points from a fantasy quarterback perspective. So Drew Lock, a guy with so much swagger, singing on the sideline and rapping the Jeezy. And yeah, I just think after a couple of weeks, it's taken him a little bit. He didn't have a strong start to the 2020 season, but as of late, he looks in form.
Drew Jeezy Lock.
Right.
It's funny you mentioned that because my wide receiver is going to be Jerry Jeudy for the reason you just mentioned. He's starting to pick up some steam. The first few weeks there, not that great, but he didn't have his quarterback for a lot of that. Drew Lock coming back from injury, back-to-back weeks now. I feel like they're finding some consistency there. They're really getting things going. I feel like I'm starting to talk like Mel Kiper, but that's what this is about. I like Jerry Jeudy this week going against Vegas. I think Drew Lock is getting things going for that team, for that offense. Ton of firepower. I like Jerry Jeudy this week.
Whatever. So my under the radar receiver, phenomenal Mel Kiper impression, by the way. It's like your boy Joe. Darnell Mooney versus the.
I looked at him. I swear to God, I was thinking about him.
Yeah, so 11 targets last week facing a Vikings defense, giving up the third most fantasy points to receivers. Talk about a guy finding his groove. I mean, I guess you could say his ceiling is the moon, as some would say. Darnell Mooney.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
His ceiling is the Mooney. I wonder if somebody's made that shirt out in Chicago.
They have to, man. After the season they're having right now, they're going to have to print some shirts like that. But no, I mean, Allen Robinson obviously is going to get his every week. But I actually feel like with Nick Foles, I mean, for whatever reason, he likes Mooney. So, he's more of a deep, more of a downfield guy. And the Bears haven't exactly been able to do that the last couple of weeks. But he's still been producing, especially, like I said, 11 targets last week. So that's very encouraging.
I'm with, again, that was a guy I considered here. I ended up going with Jerry Jeudy. But I do feel like Darnell Mooney is kind of separating himself as the second option in that passing game in Chicago, in front of Anthony Miller, in front of Jimmy Graham, at least in front of Jimmy Graham before you get inside the red zone. But again, yeah, he's, a field stretcher. I actually really liked him coming into like the draft process. I was a big fan of him as, a day 3 guy that a team could pick up and the, return of investment would be great. And yeah, with what he's doing in Chicago, the volume of targets is definitely there. It's just, is he going to be able to make something out of it? And we'll see. My running back, unfortunately, it's this guy because I'm a huge fan of the other running back that they are not giving touches to because of this guy. It's going to be J.D. McKissic. 16 targets. Yes, 16 targets this past Sunday, and they're going against Detroit this week, who is giving up the most points to running backs. So, I mean, you got to love the matchup. And unfortunately for Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissic has been the guy when it comes to passing the ball. And with Alex Smith, captain checkdown, back under center in the NFL for Washington, I think J.D. McKissic's probably the back to own in that backfield for right now, especially in PPR formats.
Yeah, so funny enough, McKissic was my fantasy waiver running back pickup of the week.
Ooh.
About 48% of the leagues. Like I said, 17 fantasy points last week. The Detroit Lions defense is the bottom of the barrel in terms of fantasy points allowed to running back. So, no, obviously, I completely agree with you. And yeah, I'm more impressed that you've taken my waiver wire quarterback and running back so far. So, I mean, you just might hit it on the head with the avoidable guys for the receiver and tight end position. My under the radar running back, and I know this name isn't under the radar, but whenever looking at starting percentages in ESPN leagues, he was below 70%. Leonard Fournette versus the Carolina Panthers. And and that sounds asinine hearing that name and under the radar at the same time. He's starting to find his rhythm a little bit in Tampa Bay. Three straight 10-point outings for the Buccaneers. I know Ronald Jones is starting to gain a little bit of momentum down there, but it looks like Fournette is the guy moving forward. Carolina's allowing the 5th most fantasy points per game to the running back position. And yeah, I mean, he's not starting in a whole lot of leagues for whatever reasons. I don't know. But I mean, he's definitely my plug and play guy this week if you have him.
Yeah. Another guy that I thought, maybe like an honorable mention here, I put Wayne Gallman going against the Eagles. We saw what he did against Tampa Bay in that Monday night game. I mean, this is a guy that I feel like is starting to, you said pick up traction in that Giants backfield. Even once Devontae Freeman's back, I don't know how you give him the keys to that car based off what, Wayne Gallman's been doing for them. So he's another guy that I would consider, but again, with the volume that JD McKissic has just been gobbling up in that passing game, he was the guy that I went with. The tight end position, I'm worried about the volume here of targets he's going to see, so it might be pretty touchdown dependent. I'm going Irv Smith Jr. in Minnesota going against the Bears. The Bears have given up a touchdown to tight ends in 3 straight games. Irv Smith coming off a 2-touchdown performance. This is kind of a dart throw, but I feel like if you're going to throw a dart on a tight end this week, again, Irv Smith Jr. coming off a multi-touchdown performance, going against a defense that's allowed a touchdown to tight ends in 3 straight, I think you can figure out why I'm going with the guy that I am.
Definitely. No, and Irv Smith was the guy I looked at, for the specific part of the show. So I'm right there with you. Just not sure the 2-touchdown production can continue.
Yeah, it was on 3 catches. So
I mean, that's more encouraging than 99% of the other tight ends on the waiver wire. So no, not even wire. It's just like in general at the tight end position, considering George Kittle is out. But if that's dart throw, I don't even know what my guy is for the tight end position. Jordan Reed versus the New Orleans Saints had maybe a catch last week at 1.5.
I think it was 1, yeah.
Was just recently activated, so I think he's still kind of trying to find his footing in San Francisco. But George Kittle, it looks like he's going to be out for a couple weeks. Very best case scenario. We'll see what that work ethic looks like on the rehab part of things. But we know one thing: the 49ers love their tight ends. Kyle Shanahan is going to find a way to scheme and find a way to get Jordan Reed the ball. We know how talented Jordan Reed is as a pass catcher, so I just think just giving him a little bit of time, and that might be this week, and that might be why I'm suggesting him as under the radar guy for week 10. But I just think sooner or later, with opportunity, Jordan Reed is going to click in San Francisco, especially with a guy like George Kittle out.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know that there's, a little bit of talk, with what Ross Dwelly did last year when Kittle was out and he's still on the roster. But I mean, Jordan Reed, we saw him have a 2-touchdown performance earlier in the year with when Kittle missed time earlier. So I still think that, if I'm picking a guy in the San Francisco tight end room, it's going to be Jordan Reed. And that's a good offense to try to get some tight end production out of, in my opinion. With just the way that they run, they're primarily a run offense, but with their running back group banged up the way that it is, and if they operate through their passing game, typically goes through the tight ends. It might not. We know that Deebo Samuel's going to be coming back. Brandon Ayuk should be off the COVID list and be ready to go on Sunday. But just with the way that Kyle Shanahan steams up that offense, having a tight end on that roster, the starting tight end, I think you do a lot worse then. So Jordan Reed, a guy that I looked at as well. So again, I don't think that's that bad of a dart throw going down the list. It gets a lot, gets pretty interesting. So
it's deep. It's deep. And interesting is one way to put it for sure.
Okay. So guys that, would typically be in your lineup that I would personally advise sitting this week, my quarterback's going to be Ryan Tannehill going against the Colts on a short week, coming off a game where he had just 10 completions. He has 3 straight games now where he hasn't completed 20 passes. He's been pretty touchdown dependent. Now, granted, he has gotten that a lot more often than he hasn't, but I like Indy's defense. I know at times they've been kind of up and down. If Darius Leonard is playing, which he missed some time, the weeks where Indy's defense was getting gashed, as long as Darius Leonard is in there, he's, the backbone of that defense. He transforms them. They're a whole lot better with him in the lineup. I don't love Ryan Tannehill this week, and he'd be outside my top 12, so he'd be a guy that I would sit.
Yeah, Tannehill was the guy I looked at as well, just because the Colts defense as of late has stepped up. I think they're number 2 in points per game allowed to fantasy quarterbacks. So that just shows you the kind of job that they've done with Darius Leonard. in the lineup. So I definitely do like that. My guy's going to be a little bit more, not like controversial, but kind of like, yeah, okay. Matthew Stafford versus the Washington football team this week. I was a guy who had Stafford either 6th or 7th in my top 10 preseason rankings. I really thought things would click for him. Things haven't clicked for him. Stafford, quite frankly, looks like dog shit this year. Just 8 fantasy points last week. He hasn't panned out all season, despite having various weapons around him. I mean, you look at every skill position he has, and it's just been, talent after talent drafted there and brought in via free agency. And it's just not clicking for him. I don't know what it is. And especially against the Washington football team, whose defense has been better than usual up to date. So, yeah, I'm definitely voting Stafford whenever I can this week.
Yeah, they are. They're inside the top 10, in terms of not allowing points to quarterbacks. So I actually have him on my team, but I'm avoiding him this week. Although, the other quarterback on my roster is Carson Wentz. I was somebody that lost Dak. Those were, I had Wentz as my backup and Stafford on waivers. So those are my 2 quarterbacks now. I'm rotating them based off matchup. Wentz goes against the Giants this week, and they're, number 11 in terms of holding quarterbacks to points. So that's not great either, but I completely understand Stafford. He only has 2 games this year where he's thrown for over 300 yards. He has 4 games where he's thrown either 0 or 1 touchdown. I mean, yeah, it just hasn't been great for him this year. So completely understand that. My wide receiver, you already mentioned him early in the show. This is going to surprise people. It's going to be Chris Godwin going against Carolina. I'm not sure where that hand is at with the emergence, or at least I expect, of Antonio Brown another week in that offense. I think he's going to take away a good bit from Chris Godwin. I'm curious to see how all the pieces work there. But, at least for this week, one more week, I'm, weary of Chris Godwin. And, it's a combination of whatever's going on with that hand, combined with the fact that Antonio Brown is going to see more targets, I think, than he did last week.
Yeah, so the hand issue doesn't really bother me. It showed no signs of bothering him, at least on Sunday Night Football. So I'm not too worried about that. But on the other hand, everything you just said makes sense. That puzzle in Tampa Bay still needs to be worked out. And as a fantasy owner of either Evans, Godwin, or even if you own Antonio Brown, you're going to have to hold your breath for a couple weeks just to see let it sort itself out. Just to see what that picture looks like moving forward. So, I think if you have Chris Godwin,
you're playing him.
We're probably going to start him.
Yeah.
But yeah, his outlook this week is not very phenomenal. So I definitely agree with you. My receiver this week might be kind of borderline same, just in terms of not having the best counter production across from him. Tyler Lockett versus the Los Angeles Rams. As a Lockett owner, it's been extremely disappointing to see his fantasy role turn into a boom or bust thing, especially in the 2020 season with DK Metcalf rising as wide receiver 1 in Seattle. He's facing a tough matchup. The Rams are allowing the second fewest fantasy points to receivers. And, Tyler Lockett's really not showing me a whole lot to have confidence in him, at least this week moving forward. So my avoidable guy at the receiver position is Lockett.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. Could be, at one point during the season, just a couple weeks ago, we felt like it was DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett week to week. Tyler Lockett has 2 games here where he scored 3 touchdowns, but you isolate those, and it's pretty much been DK Metcalf as the clear-cut guy. So, yeah, I mean, I completely understand that. As a Tyler Lockett owner, I hope that you are completely wrong. But
same. Yeah.
My running back looks like he's going to play. He had a thigh injury, but he had some time to get right. It's going to be Darrell Henderson going against the Seattle Seahawks. As far as bad as Seattle is at giving up the passing yards, and this is the reason that maybe they're not good against the run, but teams just aren't running against them because of how exploitable they are in the passing game. They haven't given up over 60 yards to a running back this year. So I like this matchup from the standpoint of I don't think he's going to score a lot of points against them because the Rams are just going to absolutely dash them through the air. And the only way that I think Henderson would have a big game is should Seattle not be able to score on the Rams, and then we have a blowout and Henderson's just running the ball the entire second half to chew clock. But assuming, and I expect Seattle to also be able to score with the Rams, that this turns into like a shootout situation, I don't see Henderson having a big game here. So he'd be a guy that I wouldn't use in that RB2 or flex spot, which he's been pretty typically put into because he has given you solid production for the last few weeks.
No, I completely agree with you. As long as Bobby Wagner is still in that front seven, I'm kind of really wary starting any running back. I know just the dominance that he brings on the field is phenomenal, and I do think the Rams are going to lean a little bit more heavily on the passing game moving forward, especially with the receivers that they have in Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. Um, I think my running back this week is kind of the low hanging fruit, especially considering if he even plays. But if he does, do not start Joe Mixon versus Steelers defense. I know a lot of Ezekiel Elliott people last week stuck to their guns, rightfully so started Zeke because you're not going to sit him. Less than double-digit scoring for Zeke last week. Did not hardly do anything against Steelers front seven. It's going to be the same story for Joe Mixon. Arguably the same talented offensive line, rookie quarterback. I know he's going to get opportunities in both the rushing and passing attack. It's just not going to work out for him. If you're going to beat the Steelers, you're going to beat them through the air. You're going to beat them with their secondary. It's not going to happen running the football. So Joe Mixon is not in for a good day on Sunday. So I would definitely avoid him.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree. Also, coming off injury, that's a big part of it too. I think that Cincinnati, if they're going to have success on offense, I like what they have in terms of that wide receiver group, especially with T. Higgins outperforming what I thought he would be doing, at least this year. I was skeptical of him coming out, so but he's having a real nice year. My tight end, he's absolutely going to be in everybody's lineups. Should you have him on the roster, especially at such a thin position. But this week, it's going to be Mark Andrews going against the Patriots. They just do not give up points to the tight end position. He has not been great this year. The return on investment, I keep saying that word, but, for pretty much, for Lamar Jackson, anybody in that passing game has not been great. People were expecting another big year from Mark Andrews. They haven't gotten it. People were expecting a breakout year from Hollywood Brown. They haven't gotten it. Just that passing game, it hasn't been it, Chief. So Mark Andrews, don't love him this week going against New England.
Yeah, so Mark Andrews was also my avoidable guy at the tight end position. Poor streak performances, 4, 6, and 5-point performances the last 3 weeks, respectively. Like I said, New England is the number one team against tight ends this year. And yeah, he just has not lived up to the hype. I don't know how much of that is due to Lamar Jackson. I know from the Baltimore Ravens games that I've seen this year, he has struggled with drops. He hasn't been exactly stellar catching the football. But yeah, I mean, if you have Mark Andrews, you're going to obviously play him. It's just due to how thin that position is. But man, has he struggled as of late, and it doesn't get any better this week versus the Patriots.
Yeah. Okay, so similar there. So going to the waiver wire now. I think that I've already touched on a couple of your guys.
Yeah.
Yes. My quarterback is going to be Tua Tagovailoa going against the Chargers. He's owning just 21% of the leagues. Chan Gailey, please just continue to open up this offense more and more each week. I want to see what this kid can do. I know, his first start has less than 100 yards passing, looked a little bit better in week 2. That was a fun game against the Cardinals. I hope that we continue to see that playbook open up. I'm excited about it. I think the weapons are decent enough. When you have Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki, I think that there's enough there for him to be solid. So yeah, looking at the other options again, I could have brought up Jared Goff. He's owned in probably a little bit more, I think, on Yahoo than ESPN, which is probably why you chose him, because I think he's owned a little bit more than 60% Yahoo. So what's the ownership like on ESPN?
40%.
Okay. Yeah. So I was looking for a guy under 50. Tua just at 21% goes against the Chargers this week. Not a great matchup. It's about middle of the pack, but love Tua. Hopefully he can continue to get it done and show that was the right decision, because I know a lot of people were questioning it when they made the switch.
Yeah, so living in Phoenix, I was actually in the only market in the U.S. that didn't get the Steelers-Cowboys game, so I had to watch it on Sunday Ticket. So I case in point, I didn't get to watch the entire Cardinals-Dolphins game, but I went back and I watched it, the condensed version of the game. And Tua looked phenomenal, man. Tua looked every bit as the number one pick the Dolphins want him to be. So no, I completely trust him moving forward. And I completely agree with you. I think he definitely has the options and the weapons moving forward to be, a viable fantasy option. But you already touched on my quarterback, my waiver wire quarterback, Jared Goff versus Seattle Seahawks, 40% owned in the ESPN league. Seahawks are the friendliest pass defense in the league. Rams are coming off a bye week, like I mentioned earlier. So I'm really hopeful that Goff and company will be prepared for the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I have him as my guy that you should absolutely start. he would be inside my probably top seven option this week. In that matchup against Seattle. We did just get a question come in. Would you start Judy and Mooney this week in full PPR? Is that and, or was that supposed to be or? Because depending on your other options for me, Judy would be a guy I would definitely consider, especially like in a flex spot. You can maybe talk me into wide receiver too, depending on what the rest of your receivers look like. Mooney, that would have to be a pretty deep league. Maybe if you're using like two flex or something like that. I would, if you're asking me, or it's definitely Judy. If you're saying and, I would say definitely Judy in a flex. Mooney would be depending on what your other options were.
Yeah, so Judy for sure, and then just matchup based for Mooney. I'd have to look at the other guys and what their matchups were, in order to kind of plug both of them. But I think Judy would definitely take precedence over a guy like Mooney this week.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my wide receiver, I was actually laughing at myself when I put this. Nelson Aguilar is going to be my wide receiver. Leads the Raiders in touchdown receptions this year with 5. Has been a little bit touchdown dependent. Goes against, Denver this week, owning just 24% of leagues. He's found a home, though, in Vegas. He looks like a completely different guy. He's more confident in his abilities in Vegas. We saw what he turned into in Philly was terrible. Had one decent season there. Other than that, they were making jokes about him not being able to catch the ball. Things have started turning around for him in Vegas. Like I said, he's found a home. His target share hasn't been great. Like I said, he's been a little bit touchdown dependent. But hey, as long as those are coming, he's scoring at worst every other game. I think he'd do a lot worse. Owning just 24% of the leagues, kind of a dart throw for me, but
yeah, I know what a dart throw that is. If you're getting touchdown production like that from a guy like Nelson Aguilar, then I wouldn't have any problem, plugging and playing him from the waiver wire spot. My fantasy, waiver wire picking up at the wide receiver position is kind of the same on 23% of the leagues. And a teammate of Jerry Judy, Tim Patrick, versus the Las Vegas, kind of same matchup. Last 4 or 5 games, he's played double-digit fantasy football performances. Not exactly the wide receiver one, but Patrick himself starting to gain a little bit of momentum, starting to get a little bit bigger role in that offense. Noah Fant, one of their big receiving options at the tight end position. He's struggling with an ankle injury right now. So as long as that will continue to hobble him, continue to kind of affect him a little bit, I think that'll open up more opportunities for guys like Patrick and Judy. So yeah, Patrick owned about 23% of ESPN leagues.
Yeah, hard to dispute that with what we've seen. He flashed a little bit against us, but the last couple of weeks, he's really started to come on. So I like that. My running back is going to be Joshua Kelly. Shout out to Joshua Kelly, by the way. Donnie has a picture with him. Senior Bowl 2019.
Super nice guy.
Yeah. Senior Bowl 2019 participant Joshua Kelly. Obviously, Austin Eckler's been on the shelf. Justin Jackson now banged up as well. Joshua Kelly, should he get most of the touches, goes against the Miami defense, which has been pretty solid. But listen, if everybody else in that backfield's banged up, the opportunity is going to be great for him. So Joshua Kelly's my running back waiver wire pickup.
Yeah, I looked at Josh Kelly before settling on J.D. McKissick, and between Kelly and Justin Jackson and that Chargers backfield, I've definitely trust Kelly moving a little bit more, for the rest of the season. So no, I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I probably would have used McKissick here had I not put him, up earlier in the show as a guy I'd absolutely have in my lineup this week. Just didn't want to kind of double dip there, if you will. My tight end is going to be, assuming he's practicing this week, I assume he comes back this week. Austin Hooper, owning just 42% of the leagues, goes against Houston this week, which is a great matchup. The question just is going to be the targets for him. He started out this year, he had like 3 total targets in their first 3 games. That started to change. Obviously, Odell Beckham Jr., not part of that offense anymore. The ball's got to go somewhere. Jarvis Landry's been banged up for a while. Maybe the bye week got him healthy. We'll see. But this is a guy that I think is going to have more opportunity as the year goes on. Kevin Stefanski's offense, we know how he likes to use tight ends. It was a question that everybody was asking, because we saw Kevin Stefanski, how things worked in Minnesota. Was Austin Hooper literally just there to block? But I think we're starting to see him run more routes. He's getting a little bit more involved in that passing game. And, again, going against Houston, I really like this matchup.
Yeah, so I had 2 tight ends down for my waiver wire pickups in the week. I had Jordan Reed, who I kind of like you just talked about, double dipped. He's on about 37% of tight ends in ESPN leagues. And then my other option was Austin Hooper, the other guy I was looking at. Just coming off the bye week, I know he was a big name coming into fantasy drafts, and then his stock down very quickly.
And see, that's the thing. Like, I do like him for the matchup this week, but you and I both were talking about it. We were pretty adamant. Do not expect him to go in there and put up the numbers he was in Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's just not the same. It's about the scheme. It's about the system. Yep. That's why we thought, Hayden Hurst would be a guy that would go into Atlanta and get the target volume. He's getting, 50 to 60 yards a game, every once in a while scoring a touchdown. What Austin Hooper was doing last year, maybe not exactly, maybe a little bit less production, but Austin Hooper is doing absolutely nothing like what he was doing in Atlanta in Cleveland.
No, definitely. And, Hayden Hurst is still getting the targets week to week in Atlanta. It's just not like big opportunity targets for him. Like Austin Hooper is capitalizing on every single week as the Falcon. But no, just talking about him as a Brown, I don't think it's unfair to call him a disappointment for fantasy owners, especially considering he's probably drafted a little bit higher than he should have been. But no, at least this week, like you said, he's coming off a bye. There's been a bunch of injuries and banged up guys in the Browns receiving corps. So I think there's a really good opportunity to kind of put his stamp on the Cleveland Browns offense.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, you got anything else? Any other notes or anything like that?
No, it's all good. Like I said, I'm a little bit disappointed in McCaffrey, so that would be an interesting situation monitored throughout the week. And yeah, man, I can't believe we're already in week 10 of the NFL season.
I know. Before you know it, we'll be wrapping up the show with our final NFL or fantasy championship show, and then we'll be taking our hiatus.
Yeah,
but we don't want to talk about that. We still got some weeks to go before that. We're trying to win everybody some money. Again, if there's something you guys want to see, tweet at us. You can tweet us at around the 412, where both of us have our personals here. If you're watching the show, Z23 Smitty, at Donnie Drew. If you're listening back, I just read them off again. That's at Z23 Smitty, at Donnie Druin. That's DRUIN, not like Jonathan Druin, the hockey player.
Whenever I play NHL and I do like a creative pro on there, I always have to use his name as like the broadcast. Yeah. Shout out to him though, second favorite player in the league.
So I'll tell you guys about Keats Barbershop, and then I want to mention something that I already mentioned on our regular show, the Steelers show last week, but I'll bring up on here as well. First, Keats Barbershop. It's an old-fashioned barbershop. It's located at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. He's open 11 to 7 Tuesday through Friday and 9 to 4 on Saturday. Every Tuesday, he does $5 off for military personnel, first responders, and nurses. Again, that's Keats Barbershop, 180 Brighton Avenue, Rochester, PA. Christian served in the Army, but we will say happy birthday to the Marine Corps today. Other than that, the announcement that I said I made on the Steelers show last week that I haven't made on here yet, everybody knows about Rocking Around the 412. I've brought it up multiple times on here. I'm going to continue to bring it up. But we're doing something really cool with Crowworthy, which is the network that we are a part of. So the tweet is up. For every Pittsburgh athlete that quotes the tweet and says hashtag Rocking Around the 412, those guys at Crowworthy are going to donate $100 for every athlete that quote tweets it, saying hashtag Rocking Around the 412. It's that simple. That's all that they have to do. So if you're listening back to this, tag your favorite athletes, tell them to quote it with that hashtag. Again, that's hashtag Rocking Around the 412. If you aren't familiar with the mission, I can tell you guys about it real quick. This is year 3 of doing it. We have switched it up a little bit, but essentially we are looking to take the financial burden away from families in our area. Right now we have 2 families. We're completely doing Christmas for them. We're buying their kids all the toys, all the clothes, all the makeup. If you had to buy makeup last year, it was a whole thing. Took forever. Books, puzzles, whatever, last year we had money left over. We were just like, let's get each family a Switch. So we did that. I mean, essentially we're just making Christmas happen for families that wouldn't be able to do so otherwise, especially in 2020. We know that's going to be a thing. So if you can donate every single dollar, every single penny goes to that family. If you donate at least $20, you're going to be entered to win some really cool prizes. As of right now, we have 12 different prizes, including a Minka Fitzpatrick signed jersey, Brian Russ signed puck, Hall of Famer Jack Ham signed pylon, which you can actually see the pylon sticking out right now, Juju Smith-Schuster signed football, Chase Claypool signed photo from his first touchdown. So there's a ton of cool stuff. Get involved with it. Again, just $20 gets you involved to the point where you can win some of these awesome prizes, but every single dollar donated is appreciated and will go directly to those families. The prizes come out of our wallets. So if you want to get involved, you can go to the GoFundMe. Just search at Around the 412 on Twitter with the word rockin', and it should come up right away. It typically is our pinned tweet, but right now, as I just mentioned, we're trying to get these athletes to quote it with Rockin' Around the 412 so that Crowworthy, our network that we are a part of, will donate $100 for each one. So really awesome what those guys are doing. We're super appreciative. They've been awesome to us, everything that they've done. And now this is just, kind of the cherry on top as we head towards Christmas in just over a month.
Nuts. Yeah.
Just a couple weeks away from Thanksgiving. But other than that, thanks for listening to Around the 412. This has been a presentation of Crowworthy. Winners are serving winners coast to coast with sports, gambling, fantasy, and more. Follow us on Twitter around the 412. Follow them at Crowworthy. Visit the Pittsburgh City page at crowworthy.com for sports, gambling, fantasy, and more. Until next week, it's been